Okay.
There we go.
Before I actually start, I just saw someone asked in the chat if we'll be learning about LEAD as well as CLARB. I won't be covering that. I don't know if anyone, Ian or Antonio, if any of you guys have that, or if there's another presentation on that, but just kind of set expectations. I will be covering CLARB and licensure, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
See if that works. The right thing is highlighted or not. You can see just the PowerPoint, right? No additional notes or anything?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I don't know if anyone has joined on since, but my name is Marisa Kushner. I'm the Communications and Outreach Manager at CLARB. I do work directly for CLARB. I am not a landscape architect, but I do work with landscape architects that are within our council record community that we work with ASLA, and anyone else that is kind of on the path to licensure. I do a lot of the student outreach for the organization. So this is kind of my favorite place to be with these presentations to student chapters and classes, as well as LaBash. So I'm pretty disappointed that we didn't get to go to LaBash last year or this year. At least we will be virtual. If anyone is attending LaBash this year, we will have, I'll be doing a similar presentation to this. And we'll also have our virtual booth that they're doing so that we can kind of do one-on-one Q&A type of stuff. So today I'll be talking about CLARB, licensure boards, about licensure, the LARE, and what is CLARB certification. These are all kind of words that are out there that you'll find out more about once you are closer to graduation or once you're sort of on your path to licensure, but sort of a deep dive into that today. Before I get started, we usually get a lot of questions about just the terms that we use. They're not you would hear in everyday life. When I started working for CLARB, it was a language adjustment too, to really understand what I was saying and what these things meant. So to kind of start before the whole presentation really gets into it, CLARB stands for the Council of Landscape Architectural Registration Boards. You may pronounce it CLARB. I can tell you one of our senior leaders does when she answers the phone. So however you choose to pronounce it, totally fine. But that is the acronym. So the Council of Landscape Architectural Registration Boards is it's the regulatory association for licensure boards. I will explain that a little bit more as well. The LARE is the Landscape Architect Registration Exam. This is the exam that's required for licensure. So you may have professors or you may have advisors that are talking about when you prepare for the exam, it is always the LARE. Some jurisdictions have their own local licensure exams as well, but in each of those, the LARE is still required in addition to that. Then we have the council record. This is an online verified record of your exam, work, and education history that's located in one place that you can use in support of your licensure application. I honestly compare it very similarly to an online profile. If you were to log into something and it had your entire history of everything you've ever done working towards your career, that's what your council record is. It's just not called a profile. The next term that I have listed here is jurisdiction. I know you've already heard me say that once, at least on this presentation. You'll hear it a lot more. So jurisdiction is the term that we use to describe the location in which you're looking to become licensed, or the location in which you're looking to work, or the location in which you may be having some regulation issue related to a bill that's being proposed to deregulate the profession or something like that. So CLARB's members are located in all of the US states, territories, District of Columbia, and 3 provinces in Canada. So because of that, saying the word state is not really equitable. Saying the word territory or province doesn't really work either. So we say jurisdiction, and that covers all of CLARB's members across North America. And then we have the Licensing and Registration Board. This is the governing entity within a jurisdiction that actually issues the licenses. You'll hear me say this quite a bit more, but CLARB does not issue the licenses. That would be your local licensing or registration board. When you go to become licensed, some jurisdictions may call it your license or your license number. Some may call it your registration or your registration number. So those terms do tend to be interchangeable, but those are terms that are at the local level. So we kind of say licensing or registration board at CLARB.
Marisa, real quick, before we move on,
Sure.
did you want to do this where like you go through your whole presentation and then we do questions at the end, or do you encourage people to ask questions during the presentation?
I'll really leave that up to you. I found that sometimes the presentation answers a lot of questions as I go through it. So if I'm happy to wait, or I also don't mind being interrupted, whatever you think is best.
Yeah, I like that. I think that we should probably just wait until the end because most people will probably be answered during the presentation.
Okay, sounds great. So then I'll get into a little bit about what is CLARB and what is a licensure board. CLARB, we always get questions wondering what licensure is, why it's important, is licensure necessary to work as a landscape architect? And so I'm going to break down a bit where CLARB and the licensure boards fit in this process, because I personally really appreciate not only your interest in learning about it, but having obviously been a student once myself, if someone was offering me the information before I graduated of what came next, that would be really great. And I'm finding that a lot of people just really want that information before graduation. And unfortunately for too many, this is information you might not get until later on. So what is CLARB at the basic level? I already kind of said it's the Council of Landscape Architectural Registration Boards. It is so long that when I go to conferences, I just sort of say it's a nonprofit association and it's very niche. But essentially, we work to protect the public's health, safety, and welfare by establishing and promoting professional licensure standards. What you're seeing on your screen is, is our homepage, just flat out. Our members are the licensure boards across the US and Canada. So when I mentioned earlier that we use the term jurisdiction because our members are territories, states, districts, and provinces, our members are the licensure boards. So for anyone on this meeting who is a member of ASLA, ASLA is the professional society. So the members of ASLA are people like you, whereas the members of CLARB are the licensure board. So we are the regulatory association. CLARB also prepares, administers, and scores the LARE. And then we also manage that professional record, that council record that I mentioned earlier. So in addition to these, our teams also work with our members and partnered organizations in regulation, as well as our ASLA counterparts. And we do that to educate policy and lawmakers on the importance of licensure and why landscape architecture needs to continue to be licensed. When I started working at CLARB, deregulation was not really a thing that was on the table. When I was interviewing for this position in early 2016, there were 2 bills that were being tracked about deregulation and issues pertaining to the continuation of licensure of landscape architects. We are now regularly monitoring multiple bills in every jurisdiction where CLARB is located. So deregulation in the last 5 years has just increased tenfold. And so we do work directly with ASLA and local counterparts to help however we can to continue licensure and the standards of landscape architects. So just kind of in a nutshell from that a little bit, CLARB we are the LARE, we are the council record, and our members are the licensure boards, but we are not the licensing board. So it's just important to note those differences because we do get a lot of people coming to us and saying, well, I finished the exam, now can I have my license? And that's just not something that CLARB does. So knowing that you're all students at University of Maryland, I wanted to show you what the licensure board in Maryland's website looks like, just to kind of give you a feel for that and how it differs from what CLARB looks like. I understand that not every one of you will stay in Maryland or will look to work there, but just kind of an example of what that looks like. So for Maryland or for any other jurisdiction, I honestly pulled this up by searching landscape architecture licensure, Maryland. But I've done this for every other jurisdiction and it will always be the first one to come up. They're usually an official government looking website. If you get tracked somewhere else, probably not real, but typically it'll end in whatever your local government like URL is or domain. Again, so this will be the place that if you are staying in Maryland, if you're looking, this is where you would actually go to get your license. You can see on the left, there's the licensing applications, there's resources, laws and regulations, and then they make it pretty big to renew your license or any FAQs that you have, as well as contacts. This board is located in Baltimore. I believe everything that they do is online. I would really recommend just kind of playing around on the site whenever you get a chance, if you're looking closer to graduation, just to get a feel for how it actually works at the local level. And also on the site, what's interesting, not all boards in local jurisdictions do this, but they do have their laws and regulations right there on the homepage. What many of these boards also have are whenever they have openings on their board, they'll post that, because many times if you're a licensed landscape architect, you'd be eligible to be a member of that board. So you would actually be someone who's impacting your jurisdiction's laws and regulations, and in some cases even approving licenses for other landscape architects. So later on in the process of your licensure and your career, that might be something that's open to you, but that would be through your local jurisdiction. So going into what licensure is. Licensure is the formal legal recognition that an individual has demonstrated sufficient knowledge, skills, and ability to practice without endangering the health, safety, or welfare of the public. You'll obtain your licensure, like I said, through your jurisdiction's licensure board. But basically everything else you would come to CLARB for the exam. And so licensure is required to practice in and to call yourself a landscape architect in all 50 US states, DC, Puerto Rico, Northern Mariana Islands, and the 3 Canadian provinces of Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta. All of those jurisdictions are CLARB members, so they all take the exam, or they all require the exam, take all of our guarantees that someone has completed the exam, as well as the council record. Licensure, again, so the main aspect of licensure that CLARB promotes is that it protects the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And I was looking around on your program's website too, and I know that that's something that your program really puts in the forefront as well. So I think that's great. The steps to licensure that you will kind of start and go through on your path are, you'll complete your education, gain experience, start the exam, and then apply for licensure. No matter where you're applying for licensure, we call it the 3 E's are required, and it's education, exam, and experience. And that's true for any jurisdiction in which you're looking to become licensed. So a few examples of what CLARB says and how CLARB kind of describes the practice of landscape architecture and what you might be able to do independently as a landscape architect, as a licensed landscape architect, is investigation, selection, and allocation of land and water resources for appropriate uses, formulation of feasibility studies and graphic and written criteria to govern planning, design, and management of land and water resources, prep, review, and analysis of land use master plans, subdivision plans, and preliminary plans. Determining the location and siting of improvements, including buildings and other features, as well as the access for those improvements, and design of landforms, stormwater drainage, soil conservation, and erosion control methods. Other things like site lighting, water features, irrigation systems, pedestrian and vehicular circulation systems, and related construction details. So why should you get licensed? We promote licensure, but it has its benefits. A licensed landscape architect has equal status when working side by side with architects and engineers. Licensure is that professional differentiator that you would have when you're working on a project with partners from other professions. It also allows you to practice independently without supervision or review of another professional. This allows you more opportunities in your career for management, leadership, opening your own firm. In many jurisdictions, you have to be licensed in order to run your own firm and be registered as a firm in that jurisdiction. I'm just losing my spot here. There's also an assumption that we've heard that in order to do residential work, you don't need to be licensed, but that's not necessarily true. It really depends on the scope of work that you are looking to do. And in order to do the work of a landscape architect, how your jurisdiction defines it, and to be called that landscape architect, you must be licensed. So using the title, the expertise, the respect, only licensed landscape architects can stamp drawings. And depending on where you practice, only a licensed landscape architect can be in charge of a firm in private practice as well. So depending on the projects that you'd be looking to do, you might need that. The respect of your clients, of your peers, and of your counterparts just helps you become more established in the industry. Whether you even want to just become an independent consultant, you would have that behind you to say, I'm licensed, I've gone through this, I have the expertise required to do that. I also saw on your program's website that it lists out some salaries of different, on the careers page, it lists out salaries of different levels of your profession. You can actually see that through the financial gain of being licensed. Typically you earn higher pay, you have more opportunities, you could become a mentor to other students or other emerging professionals on their path to being licensed. I mentioned it gives you that equal status. And there are also more ways that you can practice. Some of those on the previous slide, some of those you really cannot do unless you're licensed. So to run through, next steps would be the LARE and the CLARB certification. So I know I mentioned earlier, the official name of the exam is the Landscape Architect Registration Exam. You'll hear me call it the LARE. I have coworkers who call it the LARE or the LARE. So if you have been in a program or in a class or working with some of your friends and they're pronouncing it a different way, totally fine. Doesn't even matter how you call it, it's the same exam. And nobody will tell you that you're pronouncing it differently because in different regions across North America, they may only say it one particular way. The way I know that a coworker pronounces it the LARE is because I heard them on the phone with a customer and I was like, oh, all right, well, that's a third way that I was just introduced to. So the LARE is a 4-part computerized exam. It tests your knowledge and skills that you'll use every day as a licensed landscape architect. The exam is a competency measure. It measures that minimum competency of an individual who wants to become a licensed landscape architect. It's not something that will test every single thing that you've ever done. It's that minimum competency, and that would then you would then use your experience to build upon that to round out your career. So that minimum competency is what you have learned through your education and through your current experience to be able to successfully and safely practice as a licensed landscape architect. The exam is required in all of those jurisdictions that I mentioned where a licensure is required. And the content of the exam is actually based on a large scale survey that we conduct every 5 to 7 years. So every 5 to 7 years, CLARB conducts something that we call a job task analysis. And that is a survey that goes out to all landscape architects across North America. And it determines what the standards and minimum competencies are to practice. We ask questions such as, which of the following do you do day to day? And so we try to match up the questions on the exam based on what is actually happening in the profession. And so that's why it happens every 5 to 7 years. That way the exam remains current and it remains relevant and defensible. That way we can say, yes, this exam matches the current profession And that is why it needs to remain as a standard as we're defending the regulation of the profession. So actually, I don't know if any of you have been exposed to firms or anyone that is licensed and has been talking about the job task analysis, but it was originally scheduled for 2021. The last job task analysis was conducted in 2016, but due to COVID and everything that came with it, we have pushed it back a year. So if any of you are in the licensure process and you become licensed or you're almost there by this time next year, you'll start to hear about this because we will want your input on this survey. We do expect that that will come out, the job task analysis survey will come out next spring, and then any updates to the exam would happen within the years to follow. So to break it down, the LARE is, as I mentioned, that 4-part computerized exam. Section 1 is project and construction administration. This includes project management and bidding and construction. Section 2 is inventory and analysis. This includes inventory and analysis of existing conditions. Section 3 is design, and that includes concept development and design development. Section 4, grading, drainage, and construction documentation. This includes all aspects of the construction document phase. So while this is really just a quick overview, I do encourage, if you're interested in learning more about the breakdown of each section, on CLARB's website, if you just search on the top right-hand corner, we have a search bar just for our orientation guide. This is not something that you have to be in CLARB system for or anything else. You don't need to have a council record or even a profile set up with us. It's a public document. Sorry. And in our orientation guide, we have an exam blueprint. And it's right in the middle of the orientation guide, but it's also, it's right in the top. You'll be able to click through the document. You'll see the blueprint, and it actually breaks down each of these sections for the type of content, how long each section is, how many questions are in each section, and what you need to know to really take the time to be prepared for that. That orientation guide that you'll find is the leading document that we say you'll be best prepared to take the exam if you review that. But the blueprint itself is the basis of the exam and what we promote as saying that's the content of the exam. So how would you register? Once you decide that you want to pursue licensure, we recommend that you look up the eligibility requirements in the jurisdiction where you want to become licensed. So this slide and the next one that I'm going to show you are just a couple different ways in which you can find out your eligibility. So if you go to our homepage, each of our sections has this in this section on the top right. For take the exam, it's green, apply for licensure, it's yellow. It kind of matches each of those colors on the left. But that in this section is a drop down. And so you can either hit check your eligibility there, which will bring up this map, or you can go to this link, which also directly brings you to that map. Or on our homepage, search eligibility or exam eligibility, and you'll also get to this. So this map actually just shows you what that looks like. And what we say here is, in order to determine if you're eligible, where you want to become licensed, ask yourself first where you want to work when you're licensed. Because it doesn't matter exactly where you live, but it matters where you want to work. Those are the requirements that you should be following. If you live in, say, I'm just thinking 2 examples, right? So if you live in Maryland, but you want to only work in Delaware, look at Delaware. In most jurisdictions, you can start the exam as soon as you graduate. That being said, I need to preface that saying that Maryland is quite different. So most of the jurisdictions on this map you'll see are green. What that really means is that with an accredited degree, bachelor's or master's, you would be eligible to take the exam as soon as you graduate. You don't need to do anything else. It doesn't mean that you are immediately eligible for licensure. It just means that you can start that exam process with nothing but your accredited degree. In many cases, that means that once you finish the degree, you still have to prove your years of experience and anything else that your jurisdiction is requiring. But for the yellow jurisdictions, and that's why Maryland gets a little bit tricky, there's something else. So for some of those jurisdictions, it just means that they want you to sign up with them ahead of time so that they know the candidates in their pipeline. And what that would mean, an example I have is Alberta. So Canada operates a little bit differently, where their regulatory board, their licensure board, and their professional society like ASLA are one and the same. So what they want you to do is become a member, and that way they know who their candidates are. And all that means is that they then tell us who you are, and then you're eligible to take the exam, as long as you, of course, meet their other requirements. In other jurisdictions, they have something similar, because they may have those local exams that I mentioned in addition to the LARE. So they may want to keep track of how many candidates are coming up through their pipeline as well. In Maryland, sorry, one second. In Maryland, it's a little bit different, because if you were to go through the eligibility requirements between those green and yellow jurisdictions, you'd likely see that the requirements for licensure are identical, but they're reversed. So whereas in a jurisdiction, you might take the exam and then you need 2 or 4 years of experience following that, other jurisdictions say you need the experience first before you can take the exam. So Maryland is actually one of those cases. So what they require in order to take the exam for Maryland, for applying for licensure in Maryland, is that if you have an accredited bachelor's or master's degree, you need 2 years of experience first, and then they will say that you're eligible to take the exam. So you can either come to, once you're nearing those 2 years, you can come to CLARB and complete your council record, and then CLARB will actually verify that you've met all of the requirements that Maryland is looking for. And then you would basically submit that to Maryland, and they would say, okay, CLARB, this person can take your exam now. And as soon as you complete that exam, you let Maryland know, and they'll issue your license. There's no additional application. So it's just kind of that reversal of the process that you might see in another jurisdictions that's listed here as green. And so when is it offered? CLARB offers the LARE 3 times per year. It's always in April, August, and December of every year. That being said, you may see the April exam start the last week of March. So it'll really be like the final week of March into the first week of April, or something like that. In 2021, they let me make a really pretty slide, because all of our exams are within that month that we say that they're going to be, which is the first time in years that that's happened. But you can actually register for all 4 parts of the LARE in any of those timeframes. You don't need to take them in any sort of order. We call them sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can take sections 1 and 4 together, 2 and 3 together. We've had plenty of candidates actually take all 4 sections in one administration. It's a lot of studying, it's a lot of work, but people absolutely do it, and they do pass. It's not a guarantee, it's just however you feel like you do best with testing and with studying and preparation. We offer the LARE through Pearson VUE test centers. You can actually take, so Pearson VUE administers our exams for us. Sections 3 and 4 at this point in time must be taken in a traditional Pearson VUE test center. Sections 1 and 2, as of this past December's administration, are now also offered through Pearson VUE's OnVUE online proctoring system. So if you were looking to take sections 1 and 2, you could either take them in a professional test center and be in their environment, or you can take them online proctored from your own home or office. And it's just subject to their additional security protocols that Pearson VUE has tried and tested. And it's been working out really well. So this April will be the 2nd administration that we have sections 1 and 2 open to all candidates in all jurisdictions for online proctoring. We are hoping that at some point sections 3 and 4 will also be offered that way, but for the time being, they must be taken in a test center. So you can see on the screen the testing dates for April, August, and December, if you are at that point where you're looking to test, or we update these towards the end of the year, usually by early December for the following year as well.
Marisa, real quick, I just want to let you know, I don't know if you saw that little bubble pop up, but this has not happened to us before. Zoom is saying that we have like 5 minutes left for the meeting, but obviously, like, we just tried to fix it. We don't know what's going on. So
okay.
Can you see that little countdown timer?
I cannot. No, is it maybe it's because I'm sharing a screen?
Yeah, I'll give you a heads up when there's like 30 seconds left because
Okay.
it most likely is going to kick us all out. I'm really sorry for this. This is the first time this has happened. We don't know what's going on, but
That's totally okay. Is it something where we would be able to come back in using that same link?
yeah, certainly we're gonna remind everybody to like jump right back into the meeting.
Okay.
And so yeah, once everybody like comes back in, we'll probably give it like 2 minutes to let everybody come back in, and then we'll just pick up from where we left off. I just wanted
Okay.
to. I didn't want the meeting to end, and you didn't know why. I'm really sorry.
No, I honestly, I can only see a few of your heads, but some of you were looking down. I was like, I feel like something's going on. So I'm glad that you mentioned it.
Well, yeah. So
Um,
far, this is amazing. I just wanted to let you know.
Oh, thank you. So I may actually be done with the slides by then, but we'll definitely jump back in for Q&A. So why would you want to start your licensure process now, or at least looking into it? So we do have research. CLARB did a large, we called it a determinants of success study. And our research shows increased success on sections 1 and 2 when taken as close to graduation as possible. And the reasons that we found for that are actually because you are, as students, you're already in the mindset of testing and studying, whereas people who wait 10 years post-graduation might not be. And when I say 10 years, that's not an exaggeration. That is absolutely part of the career path many do take. But we have found that sections 1 and 2 taking closer to graduation have a higher success rate. So it's important to us that we mention it because we want all students to be successful on their path to licensure and in this process, because CLARB does want to be there however we can to support you. We also offer a few resources of how to be the most successful on your path and through taking the exam. So we offer YouTube videos of what the test and test center look like, our orientation guide that I mentioned earlier. We have reading lists fully available on our website. Again, these are not something that you need to be registered for the exam or to have a council record or a profile or anything else with CLARB. They're publicly available on our site. And these reading lists are actually written, or the lists are developed by our volunteers who write the exam. So our writers and our graders who are actually like looking at the exam content and developing it for upcoming exams are telling us that these are the resources that they are using as their guide, and that's why we give it to you. And then we also direct everyone to ASLE's resources, because while we do not provide test prep materials or anything else like that, we know that ASLA does, and in partnership with ASLA, we want to make sure that you know about those as well. And so if you're a member of ASLA, as I believe you all should be because student membership is free there, you should definitely be able to access any of the materials that they have. The last thing I wanted to mention about what CLARB offers is once you are licensed, you may wonder what's next. And with that, CLARB has something called CLARB certification. This is the industry recognized distinction that you have met all of the standards established by CLARB, and it carries our recommendation for licensure that you should be licensed without any further review. So this would be something where once you're initially licensed, if you're looking to become licensed in another jurisdiction, which many landscape architects are, if you were CLARB certified, many of the other jurisdictions would say, oh, you have this established certification. We don't need to go into all of your references. We don't need to do any further research. You've already met our requirements. Here is your second license, for example, or third or fourth. So it really fast tracks that mobility and your ability to work between jurisdictions on more projects, and make you more competitive among some of your coworkers and among the profession, because you'd be able to be listed on a bid for a project that maybe some other people wouldn't if they didn't have that ability to be mobile like that. So I did actually get to the end of the slides before time ran out. Are we getting kicked out?
It says less than 1 minute, so my guess is that probably in like 10 seconds or something, we're all going to get kicked out.
Okay.
Before we do, though, I just want to say this was amazing. Thank you so much. Everybody, please come back right after we all get kicked out for the Q&A. I know I have a bunch of questions.
Awesome.
But yeah, Marisa, thank you so much. This was amazing.